Hello, everyone. Welcome to Class 2 of Intentional Change Theory, Positive Psychology Approach to Change. This is Class 2. In this class, we're going to go over the model, and we're going to talk a little bit about how it applies to individuals and organizations. In the last class, we talked a little bit about how it applied to individuals. In this one, we're going to dig deeper into organizations, and we're going to go over an example of, one example of a successful change and overlaying the model with that and overlaying an unsuccessful change and how those look. Just a quick reminder before we go on. The discussions are on the subreddit, Positive Change. You can see it here, discussions on our reddit.com/r/positive change. Go there for discussions. And if you remember from last time, for the learning theory model, that the discussions are an important part of learning. So highly encourage everyone to go there, ask questions, or just to talk and contribute. Okay, so let's review real quick. So we talked about the learning styles from David A. Kolb's learning theory, basically talking about, you have your experiences that you have personally, then you have reflection, you have what does a theory say about the topic that you're trying to learn about, and then actually doing and practicing and acting out whatever you're learning about. And this is the cycle for learning. And just want to hit this again because to really learn something, you really need to go through all four of these phases. And so if you have more questions about this, I encourage you to post on the Reddit subreddit Positive Change, either under Class 1 or Class 2. Last class, we also talked about positivity and it's important to business, particularly around the positivity to negativity ratio, and how in the studies that were done, high-performing teams had a positive and negative ratio of positive comments and negative comments to about 6 to 1. So for every 6 positive comments a team would make, they would have about 1 negative. Whereas low performance had a ratio of about 1 to 3. So for every 1 positive comment they had about 3 negative ones. And intuitively, this probably feels normal for most of you. I'm sure you've been in situations where you were in a very negative environment, and chances are it wasn't a very high-performing work team. And if it was considered high performing, I guess the question becomes, what was left on the table? What else could they have done if the positive to negative ratio was a little different? If the environment was a little bit better? Then when we talked about Richard Boyatzis' intentional change theory model, his 5 phases, and we'll go into this a little bit more in detail when we compare this version to the model that he and a lady named Ellen Van Oosting created for groups. Okay, so when we talk about groups and individuals, in the model, we have basically 5 steps. The first step is setting direction. And with individuals, we call that first step ideal self. With groups, we call it a shared vision. Now, this is a little different than traditional approaches. Traditional approaches basically say, you just need everyone on the same boat, and you usually do that by creating a burning platform. Basically, a Chicken Little scenario, sky is falling. We need to get everyone scared so they jump on the same ship together. What we're saying is take a slightly different approach. In a group setting, create a shared vision, and we'll talk about that next class, how to actually do that. That in itself could be its own class, but we'll give you a high-level overview of how you could do it. For individuals, it's creating an ideal self. So basically saying, what do you want to be? And the next step is really around taking inventory, kind of seeing where you are currently. For individuals, it's called the real self, basically seeing what your strengths are and what your gaps are for whatever you're trying to accomplish. For groups, you also do a real self, but it's more around, where are your performance competencies and where are your gaps? What are you really good at and what do you really need some help with? Okay, and the next step is really just making a plan. For individuals, this is the learning agenda. We talked about that. The way a learning goal is written is, I want to learn X to accomplish Y. So if you want to run a marathon but you don't know how to run properly, your learning goal would be, I want to learn flat-footed running so I can run past 10 miles without my knees hurting. That might be an example of a learning goal. So a learning goal implies that you may or may not be successful. You may have failures, but you're trying and experimenting. And then with organizations, it's a strategic plan, and inside that strategic plan, you can and should probably have learning goals as well as SMART goals. And for those of you who don't know, SMART goals, SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. Basically, very specific goals. So a SMART goal for the running example might be, I want to run a half marathon within 6 months of today. That could be an example of a SMART goal. Okay. The next one is executing to the plan. And in individuals, it's basically around experimenting, trying, basically figuring it out as you go and learning. And in organizations, it's usually an action plan. Basically, what are we doing actively to pursue actualization of the strategy? And then the last element, which is really critical, is surrounding yourself with the right elements and support. So with individuals, it's what's called resonant leaderships, resonant leaders, resonant relationships, and people that support you. And if you want to learn more about that, Richard Boyatzis actually has a book called Resonant Leadership. Fantastic read on this topic, and he goes into much more detail about sacrifice syndrome and all sorts of things with leaders specifically. How you can become more resonant and increase your emotional intelligence. And in groups, resonant leaders are part of that, or resonant relationships that are really positive. That's a part of it. And you want it at multiple levels. So let's say you're a large organization, you want it at the very lowest level possible between peers. Because you can have resonant relationship with peers and friends, as well as your boss and your senior manager, and all the way up if you can. Another thing of social capital is stories. What are the stories? What are the things that people keep talking about in your organization? I was in an organization that would always talk about performance numbers, and because that was the case, that performance was highly valued and highly people would perform at very high levels because that was what was valued, that was amplified. Symbols. Symbols are another thing. So, do you have T-shirts? Do you have certain things that you can recognize? So the Apple has their Apple symbol, right? Anything that has the Apple symbol, is an Apple product. That would be an example of a symbol. When you see it, you probably have a certain feeling attached to it, whether it's good or bad or indifferent, but you think of something. Peer groups, as well as social identity groups, and those type of things really play a role in this as well, in the social capital piece. So there's a lot that goes into this, and we'll give them more detail in some of the later modules. But this gives you an idea of how you can compare groups and individuals, and how the model differs a little bit in terms of the steps that you follow. And oh, by the way, you can apply you can really apply the group version to anything past one person. You could apply it to yourself. You can do it at an individual level as well, but it just seems to work better if you have a group. Okay, so here's the model for individuals. First phase is the discovery phase, which is also the same as the phase for groups. For individuals, it's ideal self. For groups, it's the shared vision. The second phase, it's also very similar in individuals and groups. It's the real self for individuals and real self for organizations and groups, strengths and gaps. The third phase is a little different. For individuals, it's really around learning agenda, and for organizations, it's really around a strategic plan. Fourth phase is there's the individuals, it's really around doing. And for organizations, it's around the action plans, basically how do you turn your strategy into reality. And the fifth part of this model, for individuals, it's your relationships, your networks, which is very similar to the groups, which is your social capital. Social capital just takes it another level beyond just your network and your relationships. Yeah. So here you see the model for groups. Again, this model was created by Richard Boyatzis and Ellen Van Oosteen. Ellen Van Oosteen and Richard Boyatzis, both professors at Case Western Reserve University. But again, it's nothing. You've probably seen similar models before. We're just going to give you some tools and some stories that support each of these phases and how to actually create this. So again, the shared vision is the very first step when you're wanting to change something. What is a common shared vision that people have, which is different than a traditional approach of saying, what's a crisis you can create to cause change? So it's basically a fear-based tactic, which, as you remember from our first class, if you did the exercise, fear-based tactics will actually induce a stress response, which makes people shut down. Whereas having a shared vision actually stimulates the thrive response. Basically, it can open people up and excite people, energize people. The next step is basically the performance assessment. What are we doing well? What are we not doing well to get to our shared vision? Then what is the strategy? Basically the activities that we are going to do or the activities that we're not going to do to try to get to our shared vision. And then action plan is, okay, how do we make our strategy a reality? And realizing that we may take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's going to be a learning process, especially if it's something that we don't know how to do. And in the center of all this is social capital. Who, what, and what are the things involved around this change? So, if you're looking to change, let's say you're an organization, you're an organization, you want to get everyone healthier, you want to increase, you want people to stop smoking. So some of the things you might do around social capital is showing the health effects of smoking, putting up posters with that. So you start developing a social context and social capital around bad things that are associated with smoking. And then you can just put up things, posters that are the positives of stopping smoking, like extended life, better lungs. So you start generating these things that constantly get repeated and people see all the time. Okay. So what I want to do now is I want to talk to you guys a little bit about an example from my personal experience that I have. And this full case study is actually written on a blog. It's the leanblog.org. And the link is at the bottom of this, but it's also in the underneath this video on YouTube. You should see a link to the site, a Lean blog site, and then in the University of Reddit page, there's also a link in under the class too to the full article. But I want to talk to you about a successful change and unsuccessful change I had, and how does it apply. So successful change that I did. We were I was working at a cath lab in a very large Northeast Ohio hospital. And in the cath lab, what they wanted to do is reduce their overtime. So what we decided to do is say, okay, to reduce overtime, we've got to get a little more efficient at getting patients in and out of the operating room. So there's less downtime there, so the doctors can keep working. So we said let's run a 2-day event with a portion of the entire 40, I think it's a 30 to 40 person team, depending on the given day. Let's take a portion of that team, and then let's actually standardize what happens from front to back. How do we actually make things more efficient by standardizing them? The outcome. This was actually pretty exciting. Was that the agreed upon solution reduced the transition time by 40%, and that was tested. Now, what we can do is we can take a look at the model on how that worked. Okay, so the model basically, what was our shared vision? The shared vision for the group was, it was very clear. We wanted to make sure we had a clear-cut way of doing things, of transitioning from one patient to the other. Now, not everyone was bought into this. So in the small group that we had a doctor, three nurses and techs, supervisor, and one of the fellows. So there's a small group representing a larger group, and inside that group there were some. There wasn't a way of creating a common vision because not everyone agreed that this was the right way to go. However, with some data and some videos, we showed the team what they were doing, and then they realized, this is a very important thing. So everyone in that room agreed this is the right way to go. So we had a shared vision. Then we took a look at performance, what we're doing well, what we're not doing well. And that was simply going step by step through each of the processes and saying, okay, this is what we do well, this is what we need improvement on, and this is what we need to change. So from that, what we came up with is, okay, here is our new plan. This is our new standardized process. What we want to do is now we want to roll it out. So strategically, what we're going to do is we're going to start it off in one lab, then we're going to grow it to another lab and move it from lab to lab, or OR room to OR room. There's about, I think, 6 or to 8 rooms at any given time being used. And doing that, we decide, okay, well, how do we actually do that? Well, step one is, have one person from the team that we're implementing in work with the team that was in that had went through and designed this. Then we would do is have a mentoree for that lab. And then we would just have a monitoring process to make sure that everyone was doing everything correctly. So we had everything appropriate. We had everything be rolled out. Life was good. So when we look at just at this micro scale, the change effort was successful, especially convincing this one particular lab to change over. Now let's take a look at it as something that didn't work out so well. And this was actually the rollout process when we actually wanted to change all the labs. Basically, the situation was we wanted to roll out the change to all the cath labs. The solution was a traditional rollout of the solution to the rest of the organization. So what we did was we said, hey, you know what? This is a solution that we came with, so you're going to do it. And the outcome was it was unsuccessful. It was resisted by the team, and quite frankly, it didn't get pushed through. And if we look at it, the main concern or challenge there was right around the shared vision. Just because we generate shared vision in that smaller group, we didn't have shared vision in the larger group. And they pushed back to the point where they weren't going to have it. So we didn't get buy-in from the group because we didn't have that shared vision. Even though the other pieces might have been lined up pretty well, the shared vision was the number one reason why we weren't able to roll it out to the other labs. So having said that example, I hope that was helpful to kind of see a little bit of the importance. I encourage you to go read that full article if you would like. Gives a little more detail about each of the steps around shared vision and competencies, those type of things, as it applies to each of the successful and unsuccessful cases. Again, go to Positive Change, the subreddit Positive Change for conversations, and what I'd like for you to do is find an example that you can use for the next few classes and see if you can start applying the model to this. So as a first pass, try to use this model on your current process or something that you've done in the past so you can kind of put some teeth to some of the stuff that we're doing here. And again, feel free to post your examples to the subreddit Positive Change under the Class 2 tab or under the any other tab you think it may fit in. I think we're also going to post a projects tab or a projects topic as well, so keep an eye out for that. And again, if you have any questions, post to the subreddit Positive Change.